YouTube, what is going on? DA Comics here, coming back at you guys with another short little video. I wanted to put this out. I might be talking a little bit quieter in this video because it is kind of late at night when I'm recording this, but if you clicked onto this video, then you are probably, like me, a fan of the Spider-Man comic books, and you are probably aware that they just began a new run recently with Amazing Spider-Man issue number 1, or Legacy number 895, with the new creative run helmed by Zeb Wells as the writer and John Romita Jr. as the main artist. Now, this first issue in the run has certainly been controversial, if nothing else, but I wanted to talk about specifically one thing that really pissed me off about it, and I want to kind of go into more detail about it here. Now, I mentioned in my recent Around the Boxes episode that I didn't like that they went back to the same old trope of making everybody hate Peter Parker, right? Aunt May's mad at him, his friend Randy's mad at him, Mary Jane is mad at him, but specifically for this video, I want to talk about Mary Jane. Now, before I can explain why it pissed me off the way they made Mary Jane and Peter Parker broken up in this issue, I need to give you guys a little bit of background in case you don't know it. Now, Mary Jane was obviously first introduced in the comics in Amazing Spider-Man 42. This was years and years and years ago, back in the 60s. Mary Jane has been around since basically the beginning, and she was not his first girlfriend. He obviously was with Gwen Stacy first, but she did end up kind of becoming his main love interest. They got married and they were together for literal decades of the comic books. Obviously not decades in the comic books, but decades of the comic books. Basically, they were married for a long time until Marvel decided they needed to spruce things up. They needed to reboot the series, but they didn't want to do a hard reboot. They wanted to do a soft reboot. So they did a storyline called One More Day, where basically Aunt May is injured and on the verge of dying, and Peter Parker is desperately looking for some way to save her. He ends up meeting Mephisto and makes a deal with Mephisto to save Aunt May's life that he will give up him and Mary Jane's marriage. They won't remember any of it. They won't remember that it ever happened. It's basically like it never happened. Now, this upset a lot of fans. People were mad. To this day, people are still very mad, and this happened almost 20 years ago. Now, was it a bad decision to do this? Probably. But in my opinion, the biggest mistake they made was allowing it to go on for this long. It made for a really great story. Reading the One More Day comic is actually very emotional, seeing them crying and holding each other, and there's that one double-page spread showing all of their history together. It's a really good comic book, but the biggest mistake that Marvel made was then sticking with it ever since. Basically, ever since they did One More Day, Spider-Man fans have been begging them to undo it. They've been saying, undo it, get Peter and MJ back together, and they stuck to their guns for a very long time without doing anything about it. Specifically through Dan Slott's very long run, he pretty much kept Peter Parker and MJ at arm's length. MJ was pretty much consistently mad at him, mad at the fact that he was Spider-Man, and basically wanted nothing to do with them, and they didn't even really do the will they, won't they. They just kind of were like, no, it's not going to happen. But all of this changed with Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5, which was when Nick Spencer took over the book. Now, a lot of people didn't like Nick Spencer's run. I personally really did, but definitely my favorite thing about his run is that he was obviously trying to undo the damage that One More Day did to the Spider-Man mythos. Right from the get-go, in issue 1, it shows that this is a different writer, because immediately Peter and MJ get back together, and she is acting so differently than she was during Dan Slott's run. She's acting more like Mary Jane Watson that we know and love. She's supportive, she's loving, she's there for Peter, and she's a badass. And so through Nick Spencer's run, they start dating again, they start being together again, they're starting to build them up again, and then ultimately coming to the end of Nick Spencer's run, it's right there smack on the cover of his last issue. This is obviously meant to be a happy ending for Peter Parker and Mary Jane. It's saying, hey, they're together now, they're sticking together, and they are unbreakable. And then immediately after Nick Spencer's run, we had Spider-Man Beyond, which is where they put Peter in a coma, and who was there right at his bedside the entire time? Mary Jane Watson. Now, this is where we get to the new run, and in my opinion, the biggest mistake that they could possibly make right now. Now again, I do want to preface this by saying we're only at 1 issue in, so maybe after 3, 4, 5 issues, this will all make sense and things will get resolved, but this is just my thoughts based on the first issue of this run. Immediately, Upon reading this new run, it is very clear that Peter Parker and Mary Jane Watson are broken up. It's not clear why. I assume that's something we're going to learn as the series goes on, but it is clear that she wants nothing to do with him. She's telling him not to call her again. And then ultimately we get to the plot twist at the end of the issue where she has kids? Possibly? This is a huge, huge mistake. Not only does this absolutely spit in the face of Nick Spencer, whose run just completed, but this spits in the face of all of the fans who were getting excited over the fact that Nick Spencer was seemingly undoing One More Day. It seems to me like when Nick Spencer took over Amazing Spider-Man, he did his research, he read the entire series, he looked at what the fans were saying online, and he decided, you know what, I need to start undoing One More Day. I need to get Peter Parker and MJ back together. That seems to be his main priority, and that seems to be the main thing he was aiming to accomplish with his run, and it ended as such. But as soon as another creator took over the book, they immediately went back on it. They immediately broke them up, immediately made MJ mad at Peter again, and it makes zero sense. The very first thing that the new creator on the book did was undo the entire arc of the last creator's run. And we are one issue into the new run and it's already undone. I don't know why Marvel is so afraid of putting Peter and MJ back together, but it's really, really frustrating. I feel like on some level they think that the Peter Parker everybody knows is the single guy down on his luck, struggling with the women, but that is not true. For a large majority of the Amazing Spider-Man's run, Peter Parker was married to Mary Jane Watson. For a lot of us, that is our image of Peter Parker. Me personally, I grew up reading the Spider-Man comic books where he was married to Mary Jane Watson, those 90s back issues. That's my vision of what Peter Parker and Spider-Man is. So the fact that we can't get back to that after the horrible mistake of One More Day is really, really, really frustrating, and I don't know why Marvel won't do it. My final thing I'm going to really say on this is, like I said, it's only one issue into the series, so I really, really hope that they're just kind of trolling us here. You know, maybe a couple issues in, we'll realize why she was distant, they'll actually reconcile, and then they'll continue to be together and continue down the path towards staying together. Because in my opinion, what Amazing Spider-Man needs to do is get them back together, get them married again. In fact, even better, undo One More Day so that they remember their marriage, so that they can go into their life together, have their children, have their daughter, and we can have a Spider-Girl 20 years from now that will be super awesome, super emotional. There'll be so much history behind that character. It would be really, really cool. Marvel, do the right thing. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video. Please leave a like if you enjoyed this video. Comment down below your thoughts on this whole thing. Do you think this new run is really spitting in the face of Nick Spencer like I do? Or are you a fan of where they're going with it? Or you trust them to do something right with it? Because honestly, Marvel has not earned my trust in this case. So I'm holding out hope, but I'm not too hopeful. Lastly, my inspiration for this video, I made a TikTok today where I pulled out a bunch of my Amazing Spider-Man comic books that have Peter and Mary Jane in it, and just kind of showed a bit of the moments from their history. So if you want to go and check that out, links are of course in the description to my TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, everything like that. So I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you for watching. If you're new here, please consider hitting that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.